Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. My name is Erin Charles, and today I'm going to ask a few questions related to Mr. Johnson's recent stroke. I do understand that Mr. Johnson's speech is limited, so I will be looking to you, Mrs. Johnson, for all the answers to my questions. Okay, so let's get started. Mr. Johnson, can you explain to me what brings you and your husband in today? Good morning. My husband has been experiencing difficulties with his speech fluency due to a stroke he had a little over a year ago. After his stroke, the doctors gave him a diagnosis of having Broca's aphasia. How has Mr. Johnson been communicating his thoughts to you since his stroke? My husband has great dexterity. Luckily, the stroke did not affect the use of his hands. He points and he grumbles to attempt to get his point across to whoever he's trying to have a conversation with. In what way has this stroke affected Mr. Johnson's emotional well-being? Since leaving the hospital, he's been very distant. Prior to his stroke, he was, extremely outgoing and he loved being the center of attention. Some days he seems very depressed. Explain to me how this situation has changed the dimensions of your marriage as well as other relationships. John's stroke has put a strain on most of the relationships he has with others. Like I mentioned earlier, John was very outgoing prior to his stroke, so he did not have to depend on me for his communication needs. Whenever someone doesn't, immediately know what he wants or what his needs are, he becomes easily frustrated. So what exactly are Mr. Johnson's expectations of therapy treatment? Well, I know my husband doesn't expect to be talking fluently right away, but he does expect to learn some communication strategies to, alleviate some of the stress placed on him as well as the stress that's placed on myself. Last and final question for today, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Why now? I believe John has come to a point where he just wants to reclaim as much of his life as possible. He is, aware that he will never return to his complete former self, but he wants to start striving to become, the best man he can be in his current situation. All right, that about sums it up. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, thank you for taking the time out to come see me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. No, thank you for your time. It was greatly appreciated sitting down here and talking with you about, John's situation.